in Ponyville shimmers, morning in Ponyville shines, and I know for absolute certain that everything will time.
Good evening, my viewers and subscribers. I am TorridPasta999, your online horror entity where you find out what just barely escapes with its life and what gets sent straight to hell. Happy Nightmare Night, my viewers! Oh yes, I know it's Halloween to some, but every year are you told to fear an entity that is the purest embodiment of darkness? Nightmare Moon, the Queen of Darkness herself! Halloween is fun and all, but Nightmare Night is just so much more interesting. And in celebration of this terror tradition, your usual host has allowed me to take charge this one night. Now, for anyone who actually watched the 2003 Ninja Turtles cartoon, we all know one of its most unique markers is just how dark it was compared to most of the shows on at the time. But sometimes things got a little too dark. It sometimes baffles me just how much dark and foreboding material got past the censors. Not that I'm complaining, but nevertheless, if you're someone who just can't get enough of serious cartoon overtones and a little bit of horror, like myself, then this is the show for you. And here are the top 10 darkest episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 2000. Number 10. Good Genes. The plot? Donatello's infection worsens and he mutates into a raging monster. What makes it dark? Consider that one of the turtles' own becomes a savage beast, and the one that mutates is the only one who may have known how to reverse the effects. This comes as a crushing blow to the gang, and hard choices have to be made, including making a deal with Agent Bishop. We'll learn later on why this was such a hard decision. To find a cure for the mutation. In one scene, Mikey tries giving Donnie food, and Don tries to kill Mikey. In another, Leo is forced to use a dart blaster loaded with elephant ranks to stabilize Donnie and keep Bishop from killing him. This is pretty deep stuff, but this 2-episode story arc is not without some residual weirdness. After having nearly died, we'll get to that later, Baxter Stockman is revived by Bishop, but now only half of his body. No skin, barely any flesh, no face, no jaw, or even a skull, only a cyber eye, and the brain and a few stray nerves hanging loose throughout his body. The sight is so horrible that Stockman wails in horror at being brought back to life. Of course, all this turns out well in the end for the Fab Foursome, but there is a cliffhanger that would hang over them all the way through season 5. Number 9. Trouble with Augie. Plot? Donatello and April use the talisman travel device thingy to find April's lost uncle, Augustus O'Neill. What makes it dark? The main villains of this episode are brutish but intelligent lizard-like people that kind of resemble Leatherhead. They claim to be peaceful explorers, although something tells us right away that's probably a lie. And there are also people before the lizards who aren't around anymore. Also no surprise. But what's earned this episode a spot on the list is a scene in which a suspicious Donatello sneaks off and discovers the truth, that the first people were eaten by the lizards. Okay, so we could see that coming. But what really makes this shocking is the huge pile of bones that first tips Donnie off. And the hologram recordings he sees after confirm what we could already guess. This episode is dark because little is left of the imagination as to how the first people were finished off. All we're left to imagine is how the lizards eating them scene unfolded, and that's a pretty gruesome scene. They do manage to thwart the lizards by leading them into a bug-infested world and then trapping them there to be eaten by the bugs themselves. The irony, like the lizards I'm sure, is delicious. And of course we never see the lizards again, so you can imagine how the end results went. Every gruesome detail of it. What makes this episode so dark is how the writers use this episode's predictability to shock us with such obvious gruesomeness. Number 8. Nuts from the Underground. Plot? A 3-episode story arc where the turtles go deep below the earth to investigate the monsters stalking the sewers. What makes it dark? Well, first off, this is a story completely about a team of explorers, the turtles, investigating shadowy monsters that live in the dark caverns below. That's enough material for a whole monster movie in and of itself! Secondly, we learn that the monsters were once normal people kidnapped and mutated by the Foot Clan, that they broke out of the lab, killed the technicians that did this to them, and all that's left are the roars and the shadows and the dark, broken genetics lab. And then part 1 ends on a cliffhanger as the monsters find them. These monsters still retain some of their human nature, but others have been lost to their inner beast and now hunt the 3 that befriend the turtles, who had been forced to break their only form of protection against the wild beasts to save their lives. To help them, the turtles have to go deeper into what's basically described as a place even monsters are afraid to go, an ancient city filled only with shadows. After some mysterious phantom-like entity kidnaps all the monsters and turtles, except for Michelangelo, we learn the entity is from a near-dead race and has this crazy plan to rewield with the captured prisoners. The all 3 episodes are pretty intense and pretty creepy, and there's a very creepy, almost dream-like air to this 3-parter that brings forth a haunted feel to the monster movie horror, helped by Mikey's nightmare sequence. But for me, the crowning darkness belongs to part 1. In the entry logs from the Foot Lab, it's stated that
Master Shredder believes his enemies have taken refuge underground.
For any who weren't clued in by previous episodes about the Shredder's enemies, later revealed to be the Utroms, we believe that the turtles are the enemies spoken of. So, with that in mind, that means that the turtles are responsible for innocent people being pulled out of their own lives and permanently mutated into mindless monsters. Monsters that later go totally berserk and bloodthirsty killers. What's more, the turtles don't know about the Utroms until later on, which means they likely also believe this happened because of them. Even if they never said it, I'm sure at least some of them were thinking it. Episodes of the classic series had done to suggest that the world was in turmoil because of the Shredder was always trying to kill the turtles, but this one really set the tone of the theory by suggesting that turtles are responsible for people's lives being destroyed. Even if it was later proved untrue, even heaped with all the monster movie cliches of the era, this is still pretty heavy stuff, all neatly wrapped in a very memorable 3-parter. Number 7. Dragon's Brew. Plot? Casey Jones and Leonardo go out for a night of purple dragon passion and encounter a dark creature unlike any they've faced so far. What makes it dark? The monster and therefore main villain of the episode, known only by his serial number, T9581, is another victim of genetics testing, but unlike the human victims from Nuts from the Underground, we actually get a glimpse into the creature's pre-monster life, that he was a naval officer and is married with an 8-year-old kid, a kid who, along with the man's wife, misses his dad and thinks he's dead. Alright, so that's sad, but not necessarily dark. And we've already gone through the monster bits in Nuts from the Underground. But what sets this episode apart from the others is a 5-minute sequence in which Han blows the living snot at the monster with a freaking huge Gatling gun. Where can I get one of those? Unloading close to 1,000 rounds in it, and while Casey and Leo battle Han, the monster retreats and his upper body actually falls off his torso. So for 10 seconds, he's sitting there in 2 pieces. Oh, Oh, so wonderfully gross. Moaning and afraid, confused and in pain. Then, all of a sudden, the legs start moving and the innards from the pelvis snake out and reattach to the monster. So this thing is blown apart in a violent way, oozes everywhere as it falls apart, and then puts itself back together. That's gruesome, my viewers. We rarely see anything like it throughout the whole series, and to suddenly see it here was quite a gruesome surprise to me. I should mention that this episode is also dark because of Leo's growing aggression shown throughout Season 4, and his sense of safety for those around him is dwindling, actually making him a bit scary in some
Follow the truck, Casey. Where you going? To hitch a ride.
Anyway, this episode ends with D9581 having escaped into the river and is watching the city where he used to live. The story is never resolved, and looking back, the sad ending will forever serve as a painful reminder that the monster can never, and will never, go home. Number 6. Bad Day. Plot? Bishop hunts the turtles in a citywide chase with deadly results. What makes it dark? The action starts with the lair being flooded and Mikey's pet kitten, Clunk, drowning in a whirlpool. It's a pretty shocking way to speed things up. Clunk was just a kitten. No one had anything against him. And now he's lost forever, flushed away like a goldfish. But we're not here to talk about just Clunk, so let's move on. Before the flood, Splinter seems to suffer from a heart attack and the water starts rising. And for anyone who's read the original Mirage comics, you may remember a heart attack is what killed Splinter in the end. The gang is forced to surface where Bishop exposes them to the world. Casey and April show up just in time to save them from a mob, but realize the shell cells are giving them away. The turtles decide to lead Bishop's goons away from Casey and April, but then April's van is blown up as they are escaping, with her and Casey still inside. Casey and April are now dead. Devastated, the turtles are barely able to move on when they are ambushed again by Bishop, who somehow has every villain the turtles have faced along with him, including the Shredder, returning from the grave yet again. Shredder attacks the turtles and supposedly kills them, leaving only Splinter. Of course, we learned it was all an illusion from the Foot Mystics and none of it really happened. But still, we see 3 characters die, and we don't learn that they really didn't die until the end of the episode. Had all this really happened, it would have been a very serious turning point for this series, and the end results may have been the following entry. Number 5. Same as it never was. Lot? Donatello and the others are attacked by the Ultimate Ninja / Draco hybrid, and Donnie is sent to a parallel future in which the Shredder has dominated the Earth and beyond for 30 years. What makes it dark? You're kidding, right? If you've already seen this episode, then you know the question is rhetorical. But I'll go ahead and answer your questions anyway. The world Donnie is thrown into is broken, grey, and ruined. The Utroms have been conquered and enslaved, as well as all the Earth, and the humans now live in a sort of global Nazi ghetto where the worker slaves have no freedom. The scene shown in the episode's prologue may even remind you of Big Brother from George Orwell's 1984. Oddly enough, that's also the date the Ninja Turtles was started. But let's not stop there. As Donnie arrives, he is instantly swarmed by foot soldiers, not ninjas, mind you, and then is saved by a more aggressive one-armed Mikey. Donnie asks what happened, but Mikey never tells us. Soon after, we learn that Splinter sacrificed himself to save the turtles and is long dead. Leo and Raph had a huge blowout and aren't with anyone anymore. Casey is dead, and all because Donnie was sent into the future and therefore was absent for 30 years due to time displacement. There are some tense moments bringing the gang back together and the pretty dramatic entrance of the Shredder's palace. But they finally just cap it all off in a bloodfest. Mikey, Leo, Raph, Baxter Stockman, Hun, Karai, and the Shredder are all dead by the end of the episode, having pretty much slaughtered each other. Donnie himself killed the Shredder, literally obliterating him with a Turtle Tunnel's laser drill. Only Donnie and April are left. Donnie on the verge of having a spat attack after watching his family get slaughtered. But then he's pulled presumably out of existence, leaving April alone amongst the corpses of her friends and enemies. Although victory is theirs for once, it does not feel like it for them. not even remotely. Everyone except April is now dead, and Donatello is gone once again, taken to who knows where, if he's anywhere at all. The episode itself never reveals where. This has been named downright the best episode ever by almost every fan favorite on the list, mostly because it's so dramatic and compelling. So why isn't it at the top of the list? Well, you'll see as we go on. To number 4, The Darkness Within. A personal favorite of mine. The plot is that the angel's brother goes after some treasure and is trapped by an unknown foe, and only the turtles can save him. But are they doomed just like him? What makes it dark? Well, a good place to start is that this is episode 66, 16 away from my personal favorite number, which is also copyrighted, so I can't use it in my name, unfortunately. Stupid legal system. And it's a pretty fair if discreet warning. And then we finally get to the rest of the episode. Angel's brother is being held captive by an unseen force of evil that has the power to animate the dead and make them attack the turtles. You heard me right! For the first time in this series, the turtles actually fight zombies! Then we learn that the evil is actually an alien, not unlike the kind from an H.P. Lovecraft story. The only way to defeat it is to stab it with a meteorite spear forged by an Apache warrior. It's far more awesome when you actually watch the episode. The turtles try to kill it in its lair, but they're captured and put into feeding tubes, where each one of them have separate nightmares as the creature feeds off their fear. Raphael fights the Shredder, only to realize it's Raph himself in the Shredder's armor. Donnie tries to save Angel from falling to her death, but fails to do so. Mikey is faced against Leo, who becomes a monster minion of the creature. Wow! Where can I get an upgrade like that? And Leo is faced with the nightmare of being unable to save Master Splinter from dying. There's even a moment where we actually can see Leo's sword run through Splinter's chest. And this is a show for kids. Leo does snap out of it and frees the others, but the creature attacks and offers Leo the world, tempting him with all its riches and power. Leo actually almost accepts, but then shakes it off and kills the creature instead. As the beast is destroyed, an old guy who helped the turtles out turns into a pile of dust. So the is this. They fight zombies, are forced into their worst nightmares, Splinter is shish kebab by an injokin, the almost turns, and the old guy disintegrates. All on screen. But if none of that were enough, then we have an unresolved cliffhanger as the beast proves not to be dead and having successfully attempted another soul. This episode is particularly dark and has a lot of dark blue scenery which contrasts the eerie glow, creating a truly creepy and unearthly effect, much like how I've styled my room. But what gets me the most about the darkness within is just how much the monster is portrayed like the devil. An invader from another realm come to bring all the world under its power by tempting them, but being nothing more than a hideous red beast in reality. He's also a total jerk because he copyrighted my favorite number and so now I can't use it. My favorite scene is when Leo is tempted and almost accepts, but fights the temptation back and attacks the tempter. It's a powerful moment for me as Leo symbolically resists the devil and shut him down. So that's it. The episode is smitten with devil symbolism and stuff that never made the Halloween episode. It's very creepy and literally dark as heck. More like a Courage the Cowardly Dog episode than TMNT. Number 3. Bishop's Gambit. Plot? Bishop kidnaps Splinter and uses his genes to make an alien-killing super soldier. What makes it dark? If the episode's description didn't make it sound weird enough, or dark enough, allow me to explain just how crazy Bishop acts in the episode, as he plays Frankenstein with his clones. You heard that right. Clones! Hundreds of bishops soon to be infused with super warrior genes to mingle among society and kill the aliens also hidden among society. Okay, so seems like your typical government dude wanting to end the alien threat, and going way overboard to do so. Yeah, nothing we haven't seen already in, like, what? Every show, including this one? Every movie? But where this one differs from all the others is when Splinter asks what if Bishop's plan goes wrong, and innocent people are caught in the crossfire. Bishop's answer?
Not my concern. I'm a bigger picture kind of guy. Besides, my calculations suggest that it would be beneficial if 57% of the Earth's population simply disappeared.
At this point, we know that not only is Bishop acting alone in this, but he plans to eliminate half the human race as well as the aliens. And he's totally chill about it. This guy has flipped his lid and is using Splinter to carry out his plan.
Yes! Yes! It lives! A new evolution of humankind!
Is what he screams as his creation comes to life in a blast of electricity a la Frankenstein style. Now, before you compare him with Frankenstein, let me do that for you. Frankenstein wasn't crazy, just dumb. Bishop is crazy, no doubt about it. Mad, insane, a wacko, a nutjob to the 10th power. I mean, it's no wonder they found it so hard to ask for his help later on when Donatello was mutated. One maniac, freaky dude. In other words, my kinda guy. The Turtles rush in to save Splinter and are beset by the super soldier called the Slayer, who beats the living crud out of them before they put him in a stasis tube and go against Bishop. In the ensuing fight, Bishop falls into a sharp hook on a chain, and a sickening, graphically evoking, skewering sound can be heard. The next sequence shows his limp form dangling from the ceiling, motionless. Did we just see a guy get skewered to death and hung on a kid's show? There are 10 different places where that hook could have gotten him and would have killed him, but we never find out which spot it was. Later it turns out that he survived, but that's not the point. The point is that we heard the guy get skewered and then saw we thought was him dead, hanging like a fish on a kid's show. Gives me chills. This is truly a memorable episode with a lot of dark themes like playing God, disappearance conspiracy, super soldiers, and death, as well as pure insanity. But I think by that point it's mandatory. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget the quite imposing tones of this episode. Not that I'd want to. Number 2, I'm Monster. Plot: the Turtles and Casey go to an abandoned steel plant for a game of Capture the Flag, only to be menaced by the Rat King. What makes it dark? If you were paying attention to the last entry, Bishop's Gambit, you'll remember Bishop Slayer. You know, this cyborg super soldier creature for hunting down aliens and possibly knocking off half the world's population as well? Well, this episode is the belated sequel to that episode, in which the Slayer returns, this time without his cyborg enhancements, and now covered in bandages, and begins to revenge by picking off the Turtles one by one, though he doesn't really know why, or remember his past life. He just knows someone's in his territory, and he wants them gone. Not out. Gone. Preferably the dead kind of gone. That's usually the type that I prefer too. He starts out with Michelangelo, who is on his own because he has the flag and thus can't be caught. He starts with Mikey by strapping him to a table and leaving him alone to be eaten by thousands of rats closing in on him. So that's dark step number 1, my viewers. Mikey is to be devoured by rats as the scene changes to the others. When they get there, the Slayer, although the Turtles don't recognize him, attacks them with the ferocity of some sort of demon-possessed lunatic, and dying is just so freaky. I just want to stop and say something for a moment. All you who watch the classic series and remember the original Rat King, you might as well just hang up those memories for good, because this Rat King, totally, to infinity, trumps that guy. The old one couldn't really fight as well, as he boasted a lot and always talked too much for his own good. But this guy rarely speaks a word, letting all of his fighting do the yakking for him. And man, does he have a lot to say! Try their best, the Turtles and Casey have a hard time fighting this guy. And after Mikey frees himself by panicking, typical Mikey, they are shoved into some sort of massive chimney and are left to be devoured by the rats. Even though they seem to be going along their usual lines of losing just before winning as always, there's an unusual sense that maybe this time they won't make it out after all. But they do, and a seriously angry Leonardo takes on the Rat King solo. In the final scene, as everything is collapsing around them, the floor around Leo and the Rat King gives, revealing thousands upon thousands of hungry, vicious rats, waiting for one to fall. And one does fall, and it's the Rat King. In a prolonged, horrible moment, he sinks down in the swarm as the rats feast on his body. Oh, beautiful, gorgeous, disgusting. I love it. Finally, they escape as the building collapses behind them, and we see that, surprise, the Rat King didn't really die at all, and he's fully capable of coming back the next time, which for some reason he never does. Still, this episode is one of the best, as it not only reintroduces the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villain, but also adapts the original Mirage comic book and actually adds a lot of stuff to it, making it even better than the original, something quite rare for TMNT. But just to let everyone know I haven't gone off track, this is a seriously dark episode, and it was nearly banned for its monster movie-esqueness. The final entry, however, wasn't so lucky in that regard. Number 1. Insane in the Membrane. Plot. Baxter Stockman attempts to create a new body for himself, but the body begins to decay, and he blames April O'Neil, his former assistant, planning revenge on her for all that has ever happened to him. What makes it dark? This is the only episode in the whole series to be banned, so that's your first clue as to what makes this so dark and why it's at the top of this list. When Stockman's body begins to decay, I mean his finger falls off and lands in a puddle of his own rotting slime. Soon his whole arm goes, and the rest of him, but instead of collapsing, he forces himself to live on and holds himself together with prosthetics. And all the while, a guy is rotting into a walking corpse before our very eyes. Not his finger falls off and in the next scene we see him all messed up. We actually have to watch him slowly rot and his brain rot with him. All the while driven mad with terror over his growing affliction. So in essence, Stockman has become a zombie. But it gets even worse. Now his seriously dull glop of a brain thinks that April, his former lab assistant whom he hasn't seen since episode 3 of the first season, 4 seasons ago, is to blame for all of his misfortunes, and set out on a mad mission to kill her. Okay, so forgetting he's rotting and losing his noggin, some guy wants to kill April. So unusual? Not really. Not even that freaky, really. Okay, now let's remember that Stockman has become a zombie. How do zombies kill people? Oh yeah, that's right, by eating them. Baxter's brain has become so messed up that it's more than likely he'd resort to eating his former lab assistant for revenge. But oh, you argue, Baxter's not actually a zombie. First of all, yes he is. His body is rotting and his rationality is in the toilet. No doubt he smells something awful too. And if you've somehow forgotten that he was falling apart for the first 10 minutes of the episode, April tries defending herself by kicking him hard in the jaw later on, only for him to barely budge and his jaw knocked off, hanging on by a few tendrils of rot. And then he puts it back on like it never happened. Zombie anyone? I think so. Okay, so maybe eating her wasn't on the agenda, but there are at least 50 different ways he could have finished her off, and each one as likely as the other. And that includes eating her. In this episode, we also get a rare look into Stockman's childhood, and we learn that his mother was the only family he ever had. Not only that, she died when he was somewhere around 12. So while on the one hand we have this crazy zombie guy trying to eat April, on the other, we have this little kid who couldn't hurt anybody, not even a fly. Get it? Well, the reason the loss of his mother is what triggered his eventual becoming of a bad guy. But then you also have to consider what happened to Baxter after his mother died. Did he go into foster care? Was he adopted by a mean family? Or did he never get adopted and spend all of his teen years alone? Did he go live with a neighbor who only made his trauma worse? Or did he run away to live on the streets for a while before his genius was recognized? Or did something truly horrible happen afterwards that took away his childhood completely, and his trauma to a whole new level? We don't know, and we may never know. All we know is that something happened after his loss to trigger his villainous ego, and we'll never know what it is. There are also some variables to consider when you look at the possibilities. When Stockmanstein, as Mikey calls him,
You You asked for it, Dr. Stockman-Stein!
Steals one of Bishop's helicopters. We briefly see a guard lying on the ground as it flies off. Now, what did Stockman do? Did he knock him out? Or in his crazed zombie mind, did he kill the guard in some way? He could have suffocated him, snapped his neck, beat him and broken his spine, bashed his head in, slit his throat, stabbed him, maybe? Or perhaps he just bit out a chunk of his throat. Gruesome! Simply gruesome! At the episode's end, Baxter's mind has become so frazzled that he's crossing over his childhood memories with reality, and winds up saving the one person he wanted to eat. Meanwhile, he falls to his death in a cable car wreckage over the Hudson River, us believing he's dead. It is a sad ending to a truly messed up episode, and undoubtedly the darkest episode of them all. Well, all except Nightmares Recycled, but that episode never even made it to the final stages. Thus, Insane in the Membrane is my favorite episode of the series, as it is just so deliciously dark and messed up. And there you have it, my viewers. The 10 darkest episodes of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 2000s. Did I miss one? Somehow? Or perhaps I listed them in the wrong order? Let me know in the comments below, if you dare. This is TorridPasta999, signing out and reminding you to sleep with your eyes open.